Hi guys. Okay, so chapter 8, Cloak of the Old Gray Ghost. The four seals paddled with ease through the sunlit waters of the Selkie Cove and into the jellyfish cave. The water in the cave was cold and murky, but in his seal body, Jack was warm, and with his seal eyes, he could see clearly. As they swam farther and farther into the cave, the jellyfish began to appear. At first, there were just a few, but then there were hundreds, then thousands of pink jellyfish, purple jellyfish, orange and chocolate colored jellyfish. Jellyfish as big as umbrellas and as small as pennies. Jellyfish shaped like bells, saucers, parachutes, mushrooms, cannonballs, jellyfish as bright as candle flames, and jellyfish as clear as glass. This is a really cool picture. It kind of reminds me of in Finding Nemo when Dory and Marlin are jumping on the jellyfish. They were all different colors. Some of the jellyfish pulsed in and out as they swam. Others silently drifted by, their long, stinging tentacles trailing behind them. As Jack swam along the jellyfish, he wasn't afraid at all. His tough seal skin protected him completely. Finally, Kathleen led Jack, Annie, and Teddy through a narrow passage of the cave and into the milky green waters of the third cove. The four seals poked their heads above the surface of the water and took deep gulps of air. Jack's whiskers twitched as he looked around the cove of the stormy coast. The cove was completely silent. It was lit with a hazy, warm light. The water was flat, calm, without a single ripple. Circling the cove were strange green hills that shimmered in the afternoon light. Snow-capped mountains loomed above the hills. Jack could see the tree with the magic tree house on a distant sea cliff. "Climb onto those rocks and dry off," Kathleen barked. They all swam to a small rocky island in the middle of the cove. Jack hoisted his blubbery, tear-shaped body out of the water. He flopped beside the others and puffed and groaned. The seal body that had felt so graceful underwater now felt heavy and awkward. Jack's skin began to feel tighter and tighter in the sunlight. Almost before he knew it, the skin had slipped from his human body like old wrapping paper, and he was human again, lying on the rock in his shorts and his t-shirt. He sat up and pushed his glasses back in place. "That was great," said Annie. Jack looked at her. The same magic had happened to Annie and the others, and they were all human again. "Yeah, it was," Jack said happily. He looked around. "I don't see any signs of a winter storm here." "No, but still, I do not like the looks of this place," said Teddy. The boy sorcerer frowned as he peered around at the cove. "It gives me the heebie-jeebies." Jack glanced anxiously at Teddy. If Teddy was afraid, then something must be wrong. Teddy never acted as if he were afraid of anything. "Well, the day wears on," Teddy said, looking up at the sinking sun. "Let us hurry ashore to find the sword so we can leave this cove as quickly as possible." "I fear our search may be difficult," said Kathleen. "Look." A dense gray fog was rolling down from the mountains. As they watched, the fog hid the sea cliff where their treehouse had landed. Within moments, the fog had completely covered the green hills, and then it swept over the windless waters of the cove. "Oh, dear," said Kathleen. "The cloak of the old gray ghost is upon us." "The cloak of the old gray ghost?" asked Annie. "Aye, that's what we Selkies call a very thick fog," said Kathleen. "That's a line in Merlin's rhyme," said Annie. "Dive 'neath the cloak of the old gray ghost." Jack breathed a sigh of relief. Gray ghost wasn't a real ghost at all. It was just another name for fog. "So I guess we just go ashore and look for the sword under the fog somewhere," he said. "The rhyme says that we dive," said Teddy, "so perhaps we do not go ashore at all." "Oh, right," said Jack. "Does that mean we get to turn back into seals?" Shivering in the cold fog, he was eager to slip back into the warm, protective seal body. "I fear that we cannot all be seals," said Kathleen. "For how could we grasp a heavy sword with our flippers?" "You and Teddy be the seals then, and look for the sword. Jack and I can swim down and grab it after you show us where it is." Jack was about to say he'd rather be a seal, but before he could speak, Teddy piped up. "Excellent plan," he said. Indeed, said Kathleen, your friends are very brave. She turned and smiled warmly at Jack. Sure, no problem, he said. Let us make haste, said Teddy. Hidden by the fog, he and Kathleen pulled their sealskins back on. A moment later, Jack heard Teddy call out, Farewell, friends! Then Kathleen spoke her sulky spell, and her words were followed by 2 deep splashes. There they go. What do we do now? Jack asked. We wait for them to find the sword, said Annie. I hope they hurry, said Jack, shivering. Me too, said Annie. They listened for the barking of the seals. They listened and listened. I wonder what time it is, said Annie. It's impossible to tell, said Jack. They'd better. Shh, said Jack. He heard a faint seal bark, and then another and another. But in the thick fog he couldn't tell where the barks were coming from. Where are they? He said. I think they're over there, said Annie. Splash! Annie had jumped in. Jack couldn't see her in the fog. Annie, where are you? He shouted. Here, Annie yelled through the ghostly mist. Come on. Jack put his glasses down on the rocks. Then he slowly lowered himself into the water. And as he started after Annie, his human body felt thin and frail compared to his powerful seal body. He couldn't swim nearly as fast, and he couldn't hold his breath underwater for nearly as long, and he was freezing cold. The seal barks grew louder and louder. Bark, bark! Jack didn't see their 2 friends until he nearly bumped into them. Teddy and Kathleen were swimming in a tight circle, barking excitedly. Did you find the sword? Annie shouted. Is it here? The seals barked and dove under the water. Jack and Annie took deep breaths and followed. The seals swam quickly to the sandy bottom of the cove. They circled a shimmering object sticking out of the sand. It was the golden handle of a sword.